Today in social studies, we are going to study inventions from 1865 to 1920. An invention is a new creation, okay, that people didn't have before. So, for example, during this time, electricity is invented, cars, the telephone, subways, okay? And we're also going to study the effects, or how the inventions changed life in America. So let's look at one example. One example is the subway. Okay, so the subway was an invention in 1904 in New York City. So the effect is that now, after the subway, people could travel in New York City underground.
You know what this is, don't you? It's a phonograph, considered a miracle of the time when your grandfather was alive. In 1910, he might have known a man like Jonathan Sharp. Jonathan, with many others of the early 20th century, was thrilled by the wonderful machines and inventions he had seen in his lifetime. Never in history had inventions come so fast. In one 40-year period, the phonograph, the telephone, the electric lamp, and many other inventions changed the way people live. In the big cities, skyscrapers of steel pushed higher and higher. People called this the age of miracles. Sometimes the skyscrapers reminded Jonathan of how much life had changed from the frontier days. Steel was being used more and more. The telephone brought another wonderful sound into people's homes. In the early 1870s, one of the men who worked on it was Alexander Graham Bell, a teacher of deaf children. After years of experimenting, in 1876, at the Great Philadelphia Exposition, Mr. Bell demonstrated his telephone. Jonathan was there and heard it.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
People were amazed, and they began to realize how wonderful it would be to talk to someone at a distance. In Jonathan's business, they had one of the first telephones. At first, hooked only to another phone in the print shop. It saved all sorts of time. Soon, other men invented switchboards to connect different telephones together. Businesses used more and more phones. And more wires were needed in cities. Cities that grew bigger, partly because of the telephone. So, in time, telephones came to be much improved. This piece was another invention of Edison. Edison, who in his laboratories of Menlo Park, New Jersey, used to work on hundreds of inventions. The most important was no magic discovery. It came from years of hard work and experiment. It was the world's first practical incandescent or glowing lamp. The lamp was only part of a whole electric power system invented by Edison about 1880. This included new generators to make the electricity, of which this is a model. The smelly oil lamps and dangerous gas lamps gave way to a safer, brighter, cleaner light. This was the beginning of widespread use of electricity. Electric streetcars could move through the cities without even a horse to pull them. There were electric elevated and subway trains. Some of the early automobiles were electric too, and some were steam. But the really practical cars were driven by gasoline engines based on designs from Germany and France. One of them was made by a young mechanic named Henry Ford, working at night in the shed back of his home. The most important thing that Henry Ford invented was the idea that cars should be built in quantity and cheap enough so anyone could own one. Shortly after 1900, many different companies started to make automobiles, but Ford built more than any of them. He helped to start one of the greatest industries of our country. An even faster way to travel was the new aeroplane. What a way to launch the 20th century. In Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright made bicycles. And they were learning how to make aeroplanes. They built the first wind tunnel to study air movement. And then, here's Wilbur Wright, seen by another outstanding invention of the times, the motion picture camera. People said it was not possible to fly through the air. Many men had tried. Some had been killed. But some of the things they learned helped the Wright brothers to succeed in 1903. Planes that fly through the air. And Jonathan has been reading about messages through the air. The wireless telegraph. The Italian, Marconi, after years of experimenting, at the age of 26, put his wireless apparatus to a supreme test. In 1901, in Newfoundland, Marconi flew a kite that held up the antenna, and he heard a code signal from England clear across the ocean. Later, radio tubes helped make these signals 1,000,000 times stronger. Amplifier tubes, invented by Lee DeForest, made possible radio. Sound over the air without wires. Many scientists in Europe and America helped make this miracle. Yes, Jonathan's time was unequaled in history. Great inventions came so fast. Edison's phonograph, giving records of music and voices. Bell's telephone, carrying voices over wires. Edison's electric lamp and power systems, lighting the world. And how much better the travel because of Ford and all those automobile pioneers. And the Wright brothers and those who conquered the air. The wonder of messages in the air. Marconi and the wireless. DeForest and the radio tube, and others. And one man could see it happen in about 40 years of his life. Is it any wonder that even then, people called this the Age of Miracles?